Hey, what's up nerds? Mike here. In today's video, we are going to talk about what is a VLAN, also known as a virtual local area network. So let's jump right into it. Now, I guess if I was going to explain a VLAN in very simple terms, I would say it is a network setting that allows us to achieve a level of segmentation between whatever is connected to that VLAN. Don't just take my word for it. Let's go ahead and draw it out. Let's say that we have a switch, and we'll say this is a network switch. This could be like a Cisco device, could be very similar to your home router, could be a little Linksys router where you have little things plugged into it, or maybe it's just wireless. That's perfectly fine too. But in this case, we have a switch. This is a physical piece of hardware that we have, and we have things connected to it. We have, let's say we have this little guy. He's got a laptop connected to this. Maybe over here we have a server. So we have a physical server. It could be like a Dell server or something like that, HP, some kind of big server, maybe used to host our corporate website, for example. What else do we have? We have, you know what? We have a printer. Let's do that. I'm just going to put print. So we have a printer here. We have a server here. We have a little guy here on his laptop down here, and he looks pretty happy. Now, if they are all on the same VLAN, like I said, it is a network setting, which means we would actually configure the VLAN based on a number, and that would be configured on the switch port right here. So what we would do is we would go on the switch first and we would say, let's create a new VLAN. We're gonna call it VLAN 22. And then from there, we decide who should be on that VLAN. And we can decide that based on maybe security zones. We want all our really secure stuff to be on VLAN 22. Maybe we want only all of our printers to be on VLAN 22. Or maybe we don't have any kind of rhyme or reason. We're just gonna put whatever happens to be on VLAN 22 on VLAN 22. And that's what we're gonna do here. So we go onto this port on this switch. We log in right here. And we say, I want this port to be VLAN 22. And I'm actually putting V22 to abbreviate that, but that's what that means. Now, I go on to these other ports and I do the same thing. And I say VLAN 22 here. And of course, big surprise, VLAN 22 there. Now, what this ultimately means at the end of the day is that anything that you broadcast out of any of these connected endpoints, so it could be from our little guy there, it could be from our server, it could be from our printer, anything you broadcast out will automatically be received and heard by anything else on the same VLAN. So what that means is if, you know, our little guy here, he broadcasts this out, right? That will be received by both our server and our printer because they're on the same VLAN. And by the way, this isn't limited to one physical switch. We usually have more than one switch. So we have another switch here. I'll just put switch 2. And on it, maybe we have another printer just to make things easier. So I'll just put printer 2. Now, in this case, right, we can actually tell the switches that this link right here, we want that to pass multiple VLANs, which means we're okay with having a bunch of different VLANs in our environment, and we want to kind of span those across to other physical switches. So in this case, what we do is we configure this link as what is called a trunk. And if you're more technical, you might know this as 802.1Q. That is the standard. So that is basically what allows us to tag those VLANs across that line. So we can actually have, in this example, right, that little guy sent out a little broadcast on his VLAN. It's received by everybody on the same switch, but it goes up this trunk as well because that trunk allows all VLANs. That's how we configured it. And now ultimately printer 2 would also receive that because we also did configure that one on VLAN 22. So I guess it's very similar to if you have like social media and you had like a group chat. Anybody on your group chat can see the messages that you send by default. Anybody on a different group chat can't. And that's the same concept again if we had different VLANs, right? We could also have, we go into the switch and we tell it we want to create another VLAN. We'll create VLAN 5. And maybe we then connect something else to it. I don't know. We'll say it's a little wireless router or something like that. I guess that looks more like a TV, but we'll go with Linksys or something like that. So this is some other device, and we want that one to just be on VLAN 5. So we configure this port VLAN 5. Now, because of that, these broadcasts being sent out from all of these VLAN 22 endpoints that we've been talking about, they're not heard by that Linksys or anything connected to it, by the way. So if we have other things down here, they're not going to be heard by default. We have other people down here, maybe connected via wireless. Those aren't heard because they are on separate VLANs. Now, I want to be very clear about this, and I'm actually going to clear out the screen here. This is one more point that you do need to know about VLANs. So they are configured on the switch, right? And if we have, let's say, I'm going to draw one big switch here. And we have a switch here. And again, let's say we have a little guy here. And he's on a very poorly drawn laptop, all right? And then over here, maybe we have a printer. We have another printer. Again, I like the printer example, but it could be anything. It could be another server, could be a virtual machine, wireless user, doesn't really matter. The point is we have two things connected to this switch. Physically, they are plugged into this switch in this case. And let's say we configure a couple of VLANs on this switch. So we have, VLAN 17, we'll say. And we also have VLAN, let's say we can go up to 4094 in terms of numbers. So we'll say we have VLAN 1000, something like that. I don't know. But the point is we have two separate VLANs here. So let me ask you a question. Let me give you a quiz. If this user wants to talk to this printer, can he with just this switch? The answer is maybe. So ultimately what this means is if we want to communicate between different VLANs, like I said, it has to be routed. So what that looks like is we have a switch, and this switch, we can enable it for routing if it supports, it would be referred to as layer 3 switch. If it's a layer 3 switch, then it does support routing. And in that case, we could have those two different endpoints. I think we had VLAN 17 and VLAN 1000, right? And again, maybe I should color this with a different color. So let's do VLAN 1000. All right, so we have these endpoints. We have, our little guy down here. Maybe that's our printer has morphed into a little guy. That's perfectly fine. And then we have another one over here. All right. So like I said, they can talk, but it has to be routed. So if the switch is enabled for layer 3 or routing, if we have turned that on, that ultimately means that our default gateway for each of these VLANs should reside right here. And when I say default gateway, this would be an IP address on this VLAN. So this would be something like, I'm just gonna make something up, 192.168.17.1. That might be the default gateway for VLAN 17. And for VLAN 1000, maybe we have, 10.1.1.1, and that is the default gateway for this VLAN. What that means is that these endpoints, this little guy right here, this little green guy, if he wants to talk to that other VLAN, he will send it to his default gateway, which in this case is on the switch. And then the switch would do a routing lookup and figure out where is this network he's trying to send to. So it does that route lookup and says, oh, it's connected to me. It's on VLAN 1000. At that point, it's been routed and it now sends it to our little guy down there. So the point is we can talk between VLANs. We just need to have routing done in order to do that. And I also want to be very clear here. We don't have to actually enable routing on the switch. We could also have a router. So to do that, it would look something like, let's go ahead and draw this out. Instead of this switch having layer 3 enabled on it, we have a router connected to it. And all of those default gateways we were just talking about, so that VLAN 17 default gateway, that VLAN 1000 default gateway, those IP addresses, those would live right here on this router, and the traffic flow would look something like this. This guy talks, it goes up to the switch forwards it to the router does a routing lookup, just like the switch did when it was enabled for layer 3. And it sends the packet back to the switch and out to our guy down here on VLAN 1000. So that is ultimately how we would route between VLANs. That is what a VLAN is. Now, I hope this was helpful. This was just intended to be kind of an introduction into these concepts. If you found it useful, drop a comment and let me know. A lot of my videos have been typically a little more advanced, so I want to know if this kind of thing is useful. But that said, I hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. And until next time, stay nerdy.